What if God was also a co-host? What if the historically rare ability to question God directly and get profound answers back has been rediscovered? What would God say to today's sophisticated but deeply troubled world? Get Wisdom Live is here to share those answers with you. Here is Carl Mollison and Brian Kelly. Welcome to another episode of Get Wisdom Live. I'm Brian Kelly, along with Get Wisdom founder and director, Carl Mollison. This week, Creator answers questions about Ascension preparation. We're kind of looking around the corner here, Carl. We're anticipating success. We hope so anyway, for everybody's sake. And we're kind of asking a question out loud of what does a vacation look like? You know, if somehow the ETs were to decide to leave, we don't know if they will or not. But if they were to do that, what would that look like? That's kind of what we're looking at today.
Yes, we do have a problem. We're under the gun. We're in the crosshairs. They do run things, and it's not going well, and it's getting worse. And so we have a bit of pressure on us to get divine healing to damper their enthusiasm for our destruction. It's that frank and that important. So we're looking to Ascension eventually, which is Creator's plan for us and has been all through history to reach this time. But we have to get there in the face of increasing opposition, as it turns out. And that's not a surprise because we were created to fight the darkness.
Yeah.
And it's fighting back. So we're kind of putting a finger in the dike. But we want more than that. We want to really advance humanity to a whole new level through Ascension. And that's the promise all along, that if we can learn our lessons here, we can graduate and have a better existence in the future, in a higher plane of existence that will be unlike anything we've done. And that will be the reward for all the travails and suffering through history and dealing with the problem of evil.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're trying to, lay a foundation to kind of fill out the whole topic of Ascension and have it make sense, because, hey, we live in a modern world, right? And all the advancements we've had in the last couple hundred years and so on and so forth. And, there'd be probably a tendency for people to think that Ascension was, a fantastic kind of nursery rhyme thing that we can look forward to. And we're saying, no, not at all. That is not the case.
Well, here we are. So let's see what we can learn from Creator of all that is.
Absolutely. Here we go. You ask Creator Carl. Many are wondering what an interloper vacation, quote unquote, looks like in actual implementation. If we view the interlopers as akin to an occupying army, what does their, quote unquote, going on vacation actually look like? What historical Earth precedent resembles what will likely take place? Will it be a complete abandonment of the solar system, similar to the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan a couple years back? Or maybe like Great Britain's withdrawal from India, essentially complete, but leaving behind advisors or an embassy? Or would it look more like modern-day Japan, where the Japanese run their nation, but the United States still occupies critical bases and personnel have freedom to travel and interact with ordinary Japanese citizens freely and with little oversight? In all three scenarios, there are various levels of presence, from none to substantial, while at the same time allowing self-determination for the nations involved. What can Creator tell us?
All right. And these are Creator's words as I channeled them. If you think about this logically, compared to the gigantic footprint they occupy, manipulating humanity on every level to a large degree, individually and collectively, groups, institutions, enterprises of all kinds, if there is a vacation and a substantial departure, it would be impossible for a skeleton crew to do anything truly meaningful. Keep in mind, they don't care about you and want you dead. So they are not here to help. And having greater power, which they do wield and enjoy, will never be involved in a mercy mission a rescue effort, or any kind of backstopping maintenance of a human endeavor. Even for something humans need desperately at times, but are incapable of doing on their own, but the interlopers could, they will simply not offer assistance. It is not what they do. They only take away, they do not add. There will also be dissension in the ranks if some cannot enjoy the privilege of having a lengthy break from the monotony and routine of pleasing their overseers with all the make work projects to cause human suffering they must carry out at the behest of their leadership. So, this is very much akin to a military at war given an opportunity for shore leave to be freed from duty for a time so they can carry out individual pursuits and desires for a time at least before they will be recalled and redeployed back into the grind, and in fact, helping bring things to a head with a wholesale annihilation of humanity. That itself will be a large scale and laborious task, given the enormous size of the effort and the huge number of targets that will all have to be located and destroyed. So we see this as being a very thorough departure because it is just as easy for them to take all as it is to take 90% or whatever the ratio might be for a token presence. But here again, you are not supposed to interact with them in any event. So it matters not whether there is a token presence. They do what they wish with impunity at the present time. This is ideal for you from the perspective of not having a minder who keeps an eye on things and might sound an alarm if you're getting too powerful in an unexpected way. So we do not see this as a concern with current plans projected on the future timeline. Keep in mind, this decision has not been finalized, but is a work in progress still.
Well, we'll underscore that last sentence. This is a work in progress. They're contemplating this. This is not guaranteed, and we have to be cognizant of that. We have to keep diligent on our own in terms of doing the work that we need to do to try to encourage this outcome. But it's not promised. It's only in the planning stages, is what we're told by Creator here.
Yes, that is a key to understand, that we're not privy to all the inner workings here. This is just a kind of possible scenario that we're wanting to see happen because it will give us a breather. It will make it easier to do healing for humanity when there isn't a constant headwind of malevolence and viciousness directed at us in all sorts of ways, with propaganda, manipulation through mind control, and energetic influence on many things in the world, including the weather and lots of complicating factors that drag us down through the technologies that have a kind of negative side effect
Right.
that takes a toll, and on and on and on. So this is something we think will be a prelude and necessary for Ascension to happen.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. It wasn't us that came up with this idea that there was going to be a vacation. It was something that was introduced by Creator a very long time ago in this project, and that it would be necessary to have this in order for Ascension to even take place. It wouldn't be possible without it. So that's why we're kind of looking around the corner and seeing what's there. And so far, the answers of what Creator's providing are extremely interesting, Carl. U.S. Creator has used the word vacation, quote unquote, liberally when describing the goal for the interloper's anticipated temporary withdrawal. The word vacation has a precise meaning, and most people understand it to be temporary, very temporary, in fact. This is contrasted with the word abandon. As another analogy, consider the interloper operations with their intense manipulations and thousands of UFO sorties every day as a large complex operation like a large assembly plant. With the interloper vacation being proffered look more like a holiday plant closing as opposed to complete abandonment. When the plant is closed for a holiday, the lights are still on, equipment is powered down, but ready to run again with the flick of a switch, and there are plenty of full-time security personnel on site at all times of the day or night. Contracts are still in place, and suppliers know when to expect operations to resume. We know there are underground and under ocean bases on the moon and Mars. Will these still be operating during the vacation? Or is it more like closed for renovations where nothing seems to happen for a long time and no reopening date is announced, but the place is clearly not abandoned? What can Creator tell us?
All right. And Creator says, we have already answered this question, that what is envisioned happening is a total withdrawal. It is easy for the extraterrestrials to carry out, and it is just as easy for them to return seamlessly, to pick up where they left off. Keep in mind, they have total control of the world, except for minor low-level details they do not care about. So there is a degree of autonomy enjoyed by most individual humans, but that is still largely an illusion because the cultural influences are managed and orchestrated to make people think what the interlopers want them to think, to believe what the interlopers want them to believe, and to do things the interlopers want them to do. And in a way, it will be an interesting experiment for them to gauge how strong that imprint will be if they leave for an extended period and then return. So here again is an opportunity to appeal to curiosity to help encourage this to come about.
I'm reading this again, with your narrating it, Carl, for like maybe the second or third time, and I'm getting new insights out of this. Um, that we've, part of the LHP is the arousal of curiosity, and it was asked whether that was taking place, and here's creators essentially saying that yes, that perhaps could be in the offing. And the thing about this question as well was really, you know, creator comes back and re-emphasizes it's going to be a total withdrawal. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't anticipate that answer. This was a surprise to me that it would be a total withdrawal. But we have to keep in mind that these are beings that are millions of years advanced of us, and we're not going to catch up to them in their absence. They're not worried about that at all. So there's no need for a garrison to be left behind. That makes more sense now that I thought about it, Carl.
Well, I didn't know what to expect either. And I sometimes have my own opinion and inklings intuitively about what might be answered. But even with that, I'm frequently surprised by how certain and categorical the information that comes through turns out to be. And it's something that is rewarding because I'll get an explanation in a way that teaches something new,
Mhm.
because I would have already had that expectation if I'd known
Right.
what gets described with the back and forth that we do. So I think this has possibilities and would be a tremendous blessing for this to come about,
Oh, no
because
doubt.
this is what we need. We need a knee off the neck.
Yes, yes, and it's very, very encouraging to hear that is in the offing, possibly. I certainly think it's necessary. So, it's encouraging that my logic is not too far afield. Anyway, you ask creator, exploring the word vacation further, we know aspects of this operation, perhaps even the majority of it, is quote unquote off world. The Anunnaki psychics, for starters, are located in multiple sites, including their home planet of Nibiru. Do all of them get a vacation, or will a skeleton crew be used to monitor the region and situation? The Greys are robots and workaholics and arguably don't need a vacation. Will they be deployed elsewhere as well? What can Creator tell us?
All right, these are creator's words. Here again is a question of opportunity and ingenuity needed to create alternative scenarios to their liking, so there will be a widespread stand down. Keep in mind that if the leadership and immediate supervisory personnel amongst the major extraterrestrial races are absent, the Greys will not have supervision. And in keeping with the idea of an interval of non-interference as a kind of experiment, they would not want to leave something important in the direct hands of the Greys for any length of time. After all, these are only robotic beings with limited intelligence and creativity. They are designed to be servants, not autonomous beings that can be trusted to manage things entirely on their own with no outside leadership beyond launching orders for short-term operations. But here again, this is of no value to the extraterrestrials in having the alien gray robotic beings carrying out missions. If the true leadership and orchestrators of the ongoing suppression and subjugation of humanity are not here to monitor and enjoy the progress being made and to tinker with things as they do routinely, it is how they spend their time, conjuring up new initiatives, new kinds of mischief, reacting to events, and then meting out punishments at their whim and so forth. So this is above the pay grade of the alien grays. And in keeping with wanting to have an iron hand, the three extraterrestrial races in the Dark Alliance, the Arcturians, the Reptilians, and the Anunnaki, are not going to relinquish control of things to robotic beings any more than they would to an alien outside race. So any other collaborators will be banished from the area under threat. The artful task is to see that interesting ideas are impulsed to the Arcturians for what their robotic grays can be doing during the hiatus. But that is simply strategic business best left to the divine realm, as this cannot be managed from the human side of things reliably.
Whew. I was hearing you listing this first half of the sentence, interesting ideas or impulse, and it's like, do we have to come up with those? But then, oh, no, it's a divine realm problem. Let's leave it up to them. So thank God for that, right? Literally God.
Well, we have enough we've had to take care of, which, in fighting the problem of evil, it's been a long learning curve. And it's the problem is not that we can't tell there's something wrong. We're pretty good at that because of our spiritual core. We come down fresh from the light, have a short lifetime here. We get roughed up. Many get corrupted. But then we go back to the light before we restart. Now, karma stirs up past negativity and past challenges. And you can backslide, and that can become a downward spiral. And that takes a lot of people out. They become essentially a criminal element. They're thoroughly corrupted and can't be trusted to be a decent citizen. This is a real dilemma, and it needs very, very intensive and deep and long-lived divine healing to counter. So meanwhile, the clock is ticking. They want things to get that bad.
Yeah.
And they've worked at it a long, long time because they enjoy it. This is so ghastly, and it's hard to imagine, even with all the science fiction or horror movies we've had over the years, which are more like reality than we'd like to think.
They really are. So,
but here we are.
Yes. Here we are. Here we are indeed. U.S. creator, we know the members of the Alliance, the ET Alliance that is, do not like or trust each other. For this reason, it is speculated that a decision to take a vacation will be made by the collective Alliance leadership and not just one of the parties. That being the case, it would then make sense that everyone is affected by the decision and expected to abide by it. It would make sense that they would have the understanding that we all leave or none of us leave, and that perhaps a general mandate is issued literally ordering everyone, with some possible exceptions, to vacate the premises with the threat of punishment for any non-compliance, stating, Earth is closed until such and such date or until further notice. What can Creator tell us?
All right. And Creator said, this is quite true, that there will not be any purposeful or inadvertent opening allowing one or another of the members of the extraterrestrial alliance to gain an advantage. This is extremely unlikely in any event, because the supreme Anunnaki race can easily destroy the Earth and anything on it, including other extraterrestrial interlopers, should they want to carry out some occupation unilaterally during this break period we envision. So you can be sure that not only will this be agreed to, It will be an ironclad guarantee with clear understanding by all parties of dire consequences with any breach in protocol. If there is one thing all of the extraterrestrial races understand, it is the brutal nature of their compatriots. They are all savage races, full-blown psychopaths with no ability to care about anything but themselves. They may have a grudging respect for their opposition in terms of extraterrestrial alliance members, but it is only out of necessity and personal cowardice. They will only go so far in confronting and causing harm to the others. Things are in a mutual standoff, much like seen on the Earth during the Cold War, where the doctrine of mutual assured destruction from both the US government and the USSR having nuclear missiles kept each other at arm's length, with neither party willing to make a move against the other, because to do so would mean certain death for them, because any first launch, first strike with nuclear missiles would be detected on radar, and then the opposing forces would quickly launch their missiles. So even if one of the nations were destroyed, their missiles would still be in the air and eventually reach the other nation's territory, ensuring both would be losers. That is the kind of dynamic in play. It is a kind of dark criminal cabal where the independent players have selfish interests and see things to gain for themselves, as they do compete with one another to some degree, always, and have rough treaties in place that keep hostilities from breaking out openly. But that is never guaranteed. With the Anunnaki being in a superior position, it is not likely the Arcturians or the reptilians will push things too far and risk a reprisal.
Well, again, I'm hearing you narrate this, and it's really sinking in that this is another solid rationale for a complete withdrawal, literally leaving nobody behind because of the distrust they have amongst themselves. It's like we all leave or none of us leave. And Creator is underscoring that and saying, yes, that's the projection that Creator sees. That it's really the only way that a withdrawal can make any sense is it has to be a complete one.
Well, and this has a long, long, long history. I was watching one of the actually numerous cable TV programs about UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs, whatever you want to call them, and the military involvement, and on and on. And one of the so-called experts was saying that their flight characteristics are so exceptional and so dramatically different and more powerful and effective than anything humans have come up with, that they must be thousands of years ahead of us technologically. Well, that is so naive because they have no idea about the true history here.
No.
The Anunnaki civilization is almost 5 billion years old.
Yeah. Yep.
And humans have only existed in modern form, the Homo sapiens sapiens, the modern human that is our current culture, for about 125,000 years.
Yeah.
There were pre-human varieties here to kind of get a start going before the super modern human was created and deployed. So we've only had technology for, maybe a few hundred years now, and largely the last 100 or so with computers and more advanced ways to use energy and so forth. So, I mean, compared to billions of years of advanced technology, you can only dimly imagine what the Anunnaki are capable of, let alone the others who are, a billion years or 500 million years in maturity.
Yeah. I was reading an article, somebody discussing the UFO issue, and they said, we don't even understand our own oceans. That's how, put that in perspective, right? We don't even understand how our oceans operate, much less space and what it's going to take to travel at light speed and all that stuff. So we're so far out of We're so far out of the ring, it's ridiculous.
Well, and it's hard for us to grasp these things because we don't have the experience.
No.
And you can't conceive of something you've never learned yet. This is the
Yes.
problem with ignorance. It's profound, and it keeps you kind of in a quagmire, in a holding action, and you have to do something new to break out. You've got to allow a wider perspective. So that's one of the things we're hoping to do with this series is provide new information so people can expand their thinking a little bit and consider these possibilities.
Absolutely. U.S. creator, knowing the interlopers are atheists and consider our religious beliefs to be the height of folly, it makes sense to assume that they would view talk and speculation about ascension to be in the category of ridiculous. So even if there was some residual monitoring going on once they left, talk of ascension would likely not be alarming for them in the least. Furthermore, because of shielding provided by the divine for all LHP and DSMR healing work, most of the true preparation will be visible to them anyway, even and especially intuitively. What is Creator's perspective?
All right. And this is Creator's answer. The extraterrestrials running your world know that many humans have intuitive abilities. That is why they fear psychic mediums and channelers, because they know it is difficult to keep secrets. That is why there are huge disinformation campaigns and the creation of the large-scale New Age movement to dilute the efforts through many, many distractions, differing strategies, differing messages, and differing agendas to cause a lack of alignment in common cause, all in keeping with the aims of war using the strategy of divide and conquer. After all, consider the truism, united we stand and divided we fall. This is a universal one and applies very much to the current situation. They know this full well, that humans have some kind of mysterious mojo when they put their minds together in common cause. That is why they champion divisiveness on all levels of human undertaking. It is not just because it causes inconvenience, a weakening, and economic loss and suffering of those involved. It is a powerful strategy to ensure their supremacy and total control over humanity and its fate. And it has been working superbly almost entirely through human history up to the present day. One of the convenient features of Ascension that has been prophesied to happen is that the interlopers see that as a fantasy based on faulty interpretation of the coming annihilation. They know about the predictions for an Armageddon, and they see the Ascension as a human fear-based fantasy seeking to put a happy face on the future reality. They will be no more and will be leaving the earth permanently. So this actually works in your favor to add to the complacency among the interlopers about human notions and goals, as they assume they have you under their control. And that fact is being sensed by those quite intuitive and a story concocted to try to understand it. The extraterrestrials can be quite reckless at times, lulled by their sense of security that they are the apex predator and you are powerless to do anything about it. To their way of thinking, they figured you out long ago and are not much interested at all in what you think and how you live your lives, other than wanting to devise ways to pull the rug out from under you and prevent individual and collective success, to work against happiness, and to cause pain and suffering in endless ways to indulge their savage appetites. A child stamping on ants, pouring out of an ant colony, doesn't think or care about what the ants have on their minds. In the same way, extraterrestrials are so far above you, your thoughts and feelings are of no interest, except as they can concoct a scheme to undermine your plans as an amusement, because that is all too easy. is a major reason they are tired of toying with you and want to be done with this whole enterprise because it has become stale and repetitious, despite the ingenuity devoted to coming up with new schemes. They end up being familiar patterns in the end and have become boring.
Well, I, of course, take this as fantastic, wonderful, over the top news. But, a lot of people have reservations immediately when you suggest that the ETs don't give a hoot about us and could care less about what we think and don't find us interesting in the least, and that we're mere ants. And in fact, that's actually quite the barrier to conversation I've had with people. Is they can't go there and think that we are so meaningless to an intelligent species out in the galaxy.
Well, welcome to reality. This has been, you have to think about the fact this has been going on for over 100,000 years, that they have been here on the earth, coming and going, establishing bases, and manipulating humanity to be a slave world.
Yeah.
And they're just getting tired of their slaves. We're too predictable. They've let us have a little more rope to hang ourselves with in giving us modern civilization. So indoor plumbing and electric power and so on. But they do it in a way they know will also cause harm. So they can laugh at us while we're enjoying all our technologies, while it programs us subliminally through thought control to
Right.
manipulate our thinking and so on.
Yeah.
And yes, this is shocking, but this is a powerful reality we need to underscore, because we know they're going to come out of the closet.
Yeah.
There is their plan. They're going to have a disclosure event. They're working towards it. That's why all these missions are coming along uncloaked, where people record them on their cell phones, flight oversight, overflights of cities and all sorts of areas, and in very dramatic ways.
Yeah. I mean,
And that's to condition us, to get us ready for them to have a coming out party,
right.
in which they're going to be here to save us, will be the message, and it'll be a total lie and deception.
Yeah. And that's what we want to emphasize, is that this is not a done deal, this idea of vacation, at all. And what Carl just got done saying about them, working towards disclosure, is every bit, if not more, real right now, today, at this moment, than the possibility of them deciding that, hey, we need a break, let's get out of here. So our work is not done. Doing LHP work to create the atmosphere that they're more likely to choose a scenario that will benefit us as a species is something we need to keep at. This is you can't just be complacent and assume that this is a done deal. We have not suggested that from the beginning. We are not suggesting that now. You ask, Creator, what will happen to the Mercenary Army program, the MAP, members and humans? Deployment of missions elsewhere, furlough, shore leaves, resort planet in another star system, or will it be business as usual? What can Creator tell us?
And these are Creator's words. The members of the Mercenary Army program, also known as the Secret Space Program, are programmed to be essentially like a robotic being, to have their individual thoughts and initiative switched off on command, and then be ready to follow orders and carry them out regardless of the consequences to themselves or others. A high percentage of the MAP members have been involved in the MAP over multiple lifetimes. As such, they are grooved in, highly trained, and reliable. They can be put on leave for extended periods with no conscious awareness of this history, and their involvement is hired guns made to volunteer through coercion. If some age out of existence and pass away, if they reincarnate, even as an infant, they can be projected into the future and the training touched up to get them back in fighting trim. So former MAP members who are birthed during this vacation period can be age progressed and retrained upon the return of the extraterrestrials. And of course, the plan is for the vast majority of humanity to exit during that vacation interval through Ascension. And this would thwart the plans of redeployment seamlessly as they will be envisioning. The goal of the divine is to not have the population here to be annihilated, but instead a successful healing of the vast majority and departure via ascension to reach a safe haven in a very high vibrational realm beyond the reach of the extraterrestrials.
So this is a good answer too, because basically it means that the map members can go. It says, creator says, they can go on to an extended leave, and so we would anticipate that's exactly what would happen, and we can proceed with the healing of humanity, and them being members of humanity would go along with that. And so it just, creators reiterating, this is not something that we have to worry about should we get this interval that we're hoping for, Carl.
Yes, and it's good to know because there doesn't seem to be a major hitch in addition to getting this to come about. So it's not like we have to do some fundamental reworking and changes to these players, that this is something that could be seen as desirable by them, and that will help to make it happen.
Yeah.
And it will be good for us if it does.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting. It's something that I've noted throughout this series, and even the work we've been doing since this project got started, Carl, is that sometimes creator will throw an answer to a later question into an earlier question, which is always fascinating to me. And I think we have a perfect example of that in this particular show right here. Because I asked the question about the awakening of curiosity, and creator, and like one of the first questions actually talked about them being curious about how things might go if they were to back away for a while. So it's interesting how that works out. You ask creator, we know the Lightworker Healing Protocol is attempting to awaken curiosity with the ET leadership and encourage the quote unquote reawakening of lofty goals, which is the phrase taken right out of the LHP. One such curiosity would be speculation and wonder about what would happen and what would the humans do and how the humans cope when the ETs leave them alone for a while. Will they self-implode as we anticipate, or will they thrive? The only way to really know is to literally experiment and leave them alone and see what happens. Is any of this reawakening of curiosity actually taking place? Even if its motive is not far removed from the kind of macabre experiments conducted by Dr. Mengele in World War II. What can creator tell us?
All right, creator says, the expectations they will hold are really more the opposite than what you state. They do not expect humanity to fall apart, but rather the reverse, that things will get easier because they will have withdrawn the headwinds they represent in pressuring humanity constantly with all manner of torments and manipulations. So there is an opportunity with a departure for an extended interval to essentially magnify the harm by letting humanity have a taste of greater freedom, only to return one day and pull the rug out from under them in the most grievous fashion. So the final solution will be especially stark in contrast to having made some gains and advances in personal happiness in the absence of their overseers, and then their hopes dashed with the return of the extraterrestrial alliance in force to destroy their dreams and end your civilization.
Would you like steak as your last meal, Carl? I mean, that's kind of how I foresee this. It's like, you're going to the electric chair, but you get a final meal. You can request what you're going to get for your last meal. So,
well, this is certainly grisly. There's no question
Yeah.
about it. This is not. I don't like having to even have a program about this. This is just so awful. But this is describing these interlopers to a T in how they think.
Yes.
They're hardcore psychopaths, and what that means, diagnostically speaking, right from the book, they are devoid of conscience, unable to empathize, feel any love, or see a need for kindness other than as a tool
Right.
to manipulate others. This is what the severe narcissist is moving towards, a complete void of love within. And that makes everyone totally self-serving. And that's why their civilizations are so horrid, because they're backstabbers, and they're always looking out for how they can take advantage of someone else or take them out.
Yeah.
And we see what happens here amongst humanity when the criminal element gets power politically. Then there's savagery, and there is trickery, and all kinds of illegal maneuvers and manipulations to keep power and control over others.
Yeah.
And then not really do right by them, and that burden of responsibility. And the reason our politics are so awful and so corrupt is that is a prime arena for the divide and conquer strategy of the ETs. So you
Right.
see this planning out. This is mirroring their worlds, and we've talked about that in other programs, why that's so. We have to get beyond the idea of, ET phone home, that these are going to be very benign, loving creatures who are so advanced they've given up on war and only want to be beneficent. The opposite is the case.
Yep. That's what we've been told from day one on this. I like this answer. It surprised me a little bit, I'll be honest with you. But creator's first line there, the expectations they will hold are really the opposite of what you state. They do not expect humanity to fall apart, but rather the reverse, that things will get easier. So that's good news, right? Because now we're meeting their expectations, so they're not going to be duly alarmed. If they're not unduly alarmed, they're not making waves. They're not going to interrupt their vacation, hopefully, and come home early. So that was I figured that was good news.
Yeah, very much so.
U.S. creator, we know that very shortly after the most recent reseeding of humanity on Earth, roughly 200,000 years ago, the interlopers quickly noticed intuitively that something was happening back on Earth, and that quickly prompted them to return out of both curiosity and umbrage that someone might be trespassing on their property. Since it is all but certain they still retain this level of possessiveness, is there anything that might get their attention and prompt an early return? Is this perhaps the big reason that most of humanity's healing work must precede the actual launching of the Ascension? Because once it gets going, even with divine shielding, it might not be possible to completely hide the fact that something interesting is happening back on Earth. What can Creator tell us?
All right, these are Creator's words. This should not truly be a concern. After all, the excitement will be personal, and even the collective and growing awareness that something unusual called ascension is underway will not be considered a cause for alarm, because the notion is already not only present amongst many human beings, but encouraged actively by the extraterrestrial alliance as a disinformation campaign, because it lulls people into a state of complacency to think their future is guaranteed to be rosy and wonderful and better than anything they have ever experienced before. That is a perfect example of psychological warfare, to generate complacency among a populace, and that serves the extraterrestrial interests to keep everyone subdued and easily managed and controlled. They don't care if you fight among yourselves, but they don't want you fighting them. That is a key difference. So even with an intuitive surveillance of human thoughts, even growing awareness and excitement about ascension will not arouse suspicion. They will just see it as the silly humans getting excited, as a kind of folly, believing in the propaganda of the extraterrestrials from their perspective.
So this is once again where I see this as a fantastic, wonderful answer, but somebody else might, be alarmed at how can they think so little of us, and take exception to the issue of just on that basis alone. But no, this is a good answer that should not truly be a concern. Creator's words, and we can underscore that, Carl.
Yeah, and it's good news. We have to get there still, but it's
We
good news.
do. We're not
But
there.
there is a path. There is a path to progress.
Yes. You ask, Creator, is the prophesied tribulation following the ascension in the Bible literally the return of the angry and not amused interlopers? When they do return and find, well, more than half of humanity missing, what will likely be their assessment of what really happened and why? Since intense anger is usually a response to genuine surprise, is it wise to assume they might be unduly triggered and aroused and eliminate the remainder of humanity brutally and without delay? What can Creator tell us?
All right, Creator says, unfortunately, such a reaction is pretty much a given, considering the ruthless and savage nature of the extraterrestrials you are dealing with here. How much they hate humanity, and that especially after a nice vacation interval, will be excited and looking forward to the final solution of annihilation. So you can be sure anyone left on the earth will be dispatched summarily and may, in fact, endure a more tortuous ending. That is most unfortunate, but in essence, will be a karmic consequence of being in a state of ignorance and failing to take action when most other humans will be scrambling to see to their healing and to ascend once they learn the opportunity is there and the potential dangers of not doing so. There will likely be some holdouts who are too far gone in their rigid thinking to be flexible enough to see the light, literally. That does not mean they are doomed forever, only that they will likely be killed and then will need to be rescued on their passing in spirit form and raised up. There may well be some numbers of humans who cannot cooperate with their transition, just as is true today, that a third of people do not make it back to the heavenly realm on their own, even though there is an outreach always for everyone. But keep in mind, the work of the healers using the Lightworker healing protocol currently will have created a large body of healing intention that can be repurposed and will enable the beings in the light to use those healing energies in conjunction with the higher selves of the humans left behind to do an outreach for their rescue. As we have said many times now, your fate is in your hands, not ours. We cannot lead, so we cannot make people follow good advice. We can only offer the advice and let them choose.
So this is a Creator giving a very, very careful answer to this question. And kind of, reiterating that the goal is that every single last human ascends. And the good news is that someday in the distant future, that will likely be accomplished. Whether that's accomplished before the interlopers return is really the question here. And, Creator's suggesting by mentioning that, 1/3 don't make it to the light, that maybe that percentage might hold out in terms of how many get left behind. But we are told the vast majority will ascend, and that's what we can look forward to, Carl.
Well, and the other thing to remember is there is still a future for any who choose to stay behind through ignorance or a willful disregard of the warnings and the entreaties. Because keep in mind, people have been heavily programmed to think like the ETs. It's hard for us to imagine. I mean, it took me years actually to get my mind around that concept and what it really, really means. They can make anyone do almost anything. And this goes against the grain. People dismiss that out of hand. Well, that couldn't happen to me. Maybe some boob, with no intelligence, is going to buy anything. No, this isn't something you get to decide. It is programmed into you directly on a subconscious level, and you don't know what's happening. But over time, you're gradually shifting your perspective to think more and more like they do. And that's why the world is in such a mess. They have engineered it to be that way through mind control.
Right.
They're not here to help. They're here to destroy, undermine, make people suffer. And it has worked. And now they're just bored and tired and they want to finish us off. So we're damaged goods now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And this whole idea that we're all going to ascend, is going to be glorious, there's nothing you have to do, it's imminent. That is a distraction and a false message. We have to work to get there. We have to do active healing in partnership with Creator to get us ready for that to even happen. And
Yeah.
people are being discouraged to do the wrong things.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. The good, the good news I think that we should maybe point out at this point is that it's not going to be necessary for everybody to take it on 100% faith, because the bottom line is when Creator talks about the need for the healing of humanity, that includes the individuals, right? So we can expect that there will be healing that will become evident amongst yourselves, amongst your family, amongst your friends, people that have had problems their entire life. Those problems suddenly get better. So there's going to be plenty of evidence that healing is taking place. So we'll be able to see progress, I think. It's not something that's all or nothing. And as the progress grows, the faith will grow, the expectations will grow. And I think that's how we end up with a humanity that's ready to ascend, where the majority can actually make that transition, Carl.
Well, the only reservation I have about that is that can easily lead to greater complacency.
True.
Because if our problems ease, things get more genteel and more manageable, and people are becoming more truly human and wanting to see good things happen and cooperate with that, it's going to lead to some complacency that, we're on the march now. Finally, we figured out how to make our world work.
Yeah.
And then people will relax and stand down. And what's needed is some real intense active steps to do deep karmic repair. And people don't even know about that. So
Yeah,
we're going to
that's
be
true.
getting into that here with the actual answer for the healing.
Yes. Your point is extremely well taken. And I've had that thought myself, that if things improved dramatically, then people would be like, well, why would we want to leave? Right. Things are great. Fantastic. 'Cause this, why would you want to pack up and go via Ascension or any other means? Right. So in some ways, you're going to have to keep reminding people that, no, there's a reason to get out of here, because this vacation has a termination date.
We're living on borrowed time right
Exactly.
now, right
Yep.
now.
Yep. U.S. Creator, it is becoming more and more clear that ascension is the goal and the imperative for humanity. Can Creator tell us how empowered prayer, the Lightworker healing protocol, and deep subconscious memory reset, along with divine life support, are the means by which most, or hopefully all, of humanity escapes the prophesied tribulation?
And this is Creator's answer. We have said repeatedly that it is those very tools for healing that will enable ascension and survival of the human race as an exalted group of beings with greater power and reach than ever before, and indeed occupying a higher realm than the current heavenly plane, in keeping with their advanced status. Once they graduate from the earth plane with the hard-won life lessons of this lengthy contest and the struggle between good and evil. There really are no other tools like this, having the specificity, definition, and clear instructions in how to go about achieving true enlightenment. That is a healing goal, not simply gaining an understanding or a lofty perspective simply by emulating high-level spiritual beings like ascended masters, the angelics, and so on. What is in between you and ascension is reckoning with the mountain of unfinished karmic business, the many, many traumas from many lifetimes that have interfered with your spiritual growth and progress and have rendered you unfit as yet to ascend according to Creator's plan. That is why an interval unimpeded by extraterrestrial alliance mischief is an imperative to carry out a crash program of healing under conditions with a greater likelihood of doing so effectively and quickly, so humanity can be prepared to ascend and have the ascension take place, so the majority of humans can escape being annihilated and will have graduated into their new role as teachers and mentors and healers for the universe at large. It is so unfortunate that the extraterrestrial alliance has been so clever and devious and effective at confounding human thinking and perspectives. This has led the vast majority of would-be lightworkers to embrace make-work projects of all kinds, simplistic healing tools, and feel-good notions that are not a genuine and effective substitute for true deep karmic repair that is necessary to right the wrongs of history. The vast majority of lightworkers are energy healers and working on a very superficial end-stage manifestation of inner discord. Their efforts may well bring relief and even a profound benefit. And that is not surprising, given that energy is what is most immediately perceived, and its disruption noticeable to cause symptoms. But that does not mean something profound and long-lasting will be achieved simply to be free of discomfort for a time. That is a trivial benefit. Much can be gained from taking painkillers or sedative hypnotic drugs that calm a person to a degree they simply cannot experience anxiety. But those are expedients, a kind of band-aid only, and not a long-term solution to gain greater strength, resilience, and wherewithal at all levels of the being to make you truly greater than before, not just free from tension and an unpleasant mood state. Even those focused on ascension are being misled in a variety of false teachings to believe in a series of band-aids and make-work rituals that convinces many they are doing something useful when such is not the case. They are going through the motions of a process taught to them that will not deliver on its promise. They are wasting valuable time and endangering their future in following a false path compared to what could be genuine progress and deliverance. Such false directions are dispensed widely by the many psychics and channelers keying in on ascension as a goal. So they are in resonance with Creator's plan and can feel intuitively that ascension is coming. What they do not realize is they are not contributing anything to bringing that about, but instead creating a hurdle in the way of ascension preparation very much needed to get ready. In fact, until a quorum of humans have achieved sufficient healing to enable ascension, it will not commence for anyone. So there's a significant task ahead that must be engaged in diligently and in earnest to reach that critical threshold. Those who are giving false teachings about ascension preparation are making a serious karmic misstep that will harm all who follow their false lead. Unfortunately, the reason those teachers are avidly promoting their vision of what is needed is because they are manipulated and programmed to do so, to believe totally that they have the inside track, know what is needed, and their work is superior to that of others. As with truth and falsehood, not all involved can be right. And unfortunately, the darkness holds the greatest power and controls the largest number of humans and their thinking, and instilling many false beliefs to ensure people will be constrained and lack creativity and a higher awareness to break free from their self-enforced mind lock programmed into them, which they adhere to, believing in it totally. Much of the healing needed for ascension preparation is to undo the mind control manipulations done all through human history to shape the culture and instill many faulty beliefs, to keep people dimmed down and dumbed down both. There will be a race against time to see whether true light workers can save the rest before the darkness returns to end the contest once and for all.
So our homework has been delivered by Creator. But this last sentence I think was really important. Much of the healing needed for ascension preparation is to undo the mind control manipulations. So that's essentially what is causing all the problems we see in the world today. Ultimately, is the mind control manipulations, and then once they're gone, that has to be undone. That has to be unwound. That has to be detangled, and that's going to take some time. It's going to take lots of LHPs and DSMRs. It's going to take lots of divine life support, and it's also going to take a lot of re-education, Carl.
Well, we have tons of information about this all, and we've been talking about Ascension specifically for several programs, and there is much to ponder about it, but it all comes back to first principles. Healing is the key. Enlightenment is a healing journey, not a passive one, not simply reading about things, following what other people do, controlling what you think, focusing on the positive, never allowing a dark thought to intrude. All those are false notions. They're control mechanisms to limit you. My goodness, there is evil. It is real. It exists. It needs to be healed.
Yes.
Who's going to do that? It is our job to do that. We can't do it alone. Our small band of Get Wisdom practitioners and followers, we need the word to spread, and we need everyone to open their hearts as well as their minds so they can be touched by the divine and follow the path that Creator is setting out for us at long last with greater precision and specificity than ever before.
Ever before, indeed. And you can take part of that, and in that, I should say, by visiting us at getwisdom.com. We have just recently revamped our homepage to make it easier to find everything that we've been putting together for the last 7 years. Everything from webinars to a divine wisdom database with, I don't know, how many thousands of questions have been answered now, Carl?
Well, more than 7,000.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. Channelings of departed light beings. There's a whole collection of that, and I think more than 200 of them. There's all kinds of things to check out and learn from. And you're late getting started. You need to get started today, right away, Carl.
Yeah, well, it can be exciting and very, very rewarding because for the first time, you will be getting true answers about the workings of the universe, the workings of the divine realm, the rules of the road, and engaging between the divine and human. We need to be in a partnership, and it is important to understand how that works and how to do your part.
Indeed, indeed. Well, this is the fourth show we've done on Ascension, and we're going to put a little bow on it for now. The next show will be on an entirely different topic. We're going to take a break, as we want the interlopers to do, and we're going to go check out some other things. But we invite you to review this show and listen to the other three if you're curious in this topic and are new to it, as well as check out all the offerings we have at getwisdom.com. But that's all we have for this week's Get Wisdom Live, or this month's Get Wisdom Live, I should say. We'll be back with another episode next month. Thanks, everybody.
Be well.